We're going to take a look at This Week in Queer. Following on from Carl's segment, there is a lot more queer stuff that has been going on across the world. One of the things that I like to bring up is that you see one of the most common reactions to people pointing out all of the queer stuff, or especially in regards to trans events and stuff online, is people go, oh, it's only such a small amount of the population. Why does anybody care? Well, because of all of the examples that I'm going to give, because these incredibly small percentage of people are trying to completely deconstruct the reality that we live in and change the framing that we see our entire society in, which is a lot of power to be afforded to one very small group of people. And it's often the activists alongside them. Just as a quick segue as well, we've got Shill here for the premium content of the Josh's Contemplations, the latest one, number 67, on postmodernism. Speaking of nonces, they are covering Michel Foucault. Yeah. And those like obviously joking there. It is an interesting discussion where where Josh and Thomas are talking about what's going on, what the foundations of postmodern philosophy, the people said to be part of the beginning of it, where it's gone now, how it connects to a lot of the social movements going on nowadays, and also refuting some of what they consider to be misconceptions that James Lindsay and Jordan Peterson have.
But the thing is, Thomas is doing his PhD in this subject. He knows in critical theory.
He knows it back and forth, yeah.
He knows it inside out and back and forth. And he is absolutely correct, as they go into in this, about the categorical deconstruction of postmodernism. And how that, as you say, for a tiny fraction of people, will literally destroy the requirements we have for categorization for everyone. As in, and we see this in the definition of woman and man. This is it.
What does it even mean?
Exactly. Anyone can be a woman. No, they can't. And so this is a really great way to understand that. But anyway.
Yes. And obviously, a lot of what we're talking about also goes into queer theory, which is directly influenced by postmodernism. Like Gail Rubin, Judith Butler, they're always quoting Foucault on everything.
I've read Judith Butler's Gender Trouble, and she explicitly draws on Foucault. And all of the other, like the whole thing is a postmodern theory of gender, and so you can't get away from it. But anyway,
yes. Anyway, let's carry on. So the first article, because this is mainly just a compilation of things that have been going on over the past few weeks, just so that if anybody does throw that, oh, it's only a small population of a small amount of the population, what does it matter? Just so you've got examples to throw at them, really, because there's countless examples. For instance, trans police officers who are born male but identify as female can now search women in the UK.
Good news, ladies.
I don't see any problems arising because of that. Do they not remember Sarah Everard?
Strip searched as well.
Yeah, the amount of power they're giving to police officers, this doesn't look great alongside the strip search of a teenager that happened in Hackney a few years ago. I think Child Q was what they were designated because they didn't want to give the name out, understandably, where Metropolitan Police in London strip searched a 15-year-old because somebody in her school thought she smelt like marijuana. Mm-hmm. So bring the cops in, give her a strip search, spread your legs, darling. Vile. God. And then, of course, there was the case of Sarah Everard last year, which was an explicit abuse of police power. So let's just give the police officers more unaccountable power to wield.
This speaks directly to the destruction of the categories that we were just talking about, though. Like, women can be strip searched by transgender police officers who are born men and could be accused of causing a hate incident if they refuse. Because categories don't mean anything anymore.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want a biological man searching me.
Big hairy hands on you. No, well, that's because you're a transphobe. Now you've been reported for a hate incident.
So these guidelines were given by the National Police Chiefs Council, which says that chief officers are advised to recognise the status of transgender colleagues from the moment they transition, considered to be the point at which they present in the gender with which they identify. So if Barry shows up in a skirt, no recourse against it. Nobody can just go, that's a bit funny there, Barry. No, you just got to go along with it.
I'm strip searching the girls today. Yeah, I bet you are.
Getting in the changing room with the ladies. Thus, once a transgender colleague has transitioned, they will search the persons of the same gender as their own lived gender. So, 5 minutes ago, Barry decided that he's a woman. Now he's get the joy of strip searching all of the women. After stating a transgender police officer could be taken out of search if a person objected, the advice says if the refusal is based on discriminatory views, consideration should be given for the incident to be recorded as a non-crime hate incident unless the circumstances amount to a recordable crime. The NPCC told LBC that refusal to be searched by a trans officer would not amount to a recorded hate crime. Well, that's great, but recorded hate crime and non-crime hate incident are different things that get recorded differently, as we have gone over
Yeah, so
a number of times.
the police can keep a track of things that you've done that aren't illegal. Why would they need that?
Unless there was some kind of social system coming, social
Exactly.
credit system in the pipeline. Also, discriminatory views is unless they're explicitly shouting transphobic things at you as you're trying to search them, which, to be fair, I could understand
I
why
would
they
forgive.
Yeah, I would forgive. It's very, very subjective. So this whole thing basically comes down to submit or be arrested.
Yeah.
And the guidance was revealed when a retired officer, Kathy Larkman, had the guy.
Sorry, I just a vision of the future where it's just male police officers dressed as female police officers with wigs, just oppressing women. Oh, this is the future the feminists wanted for you.
Well, this is
happening?
This is almost the future they were warning us about, while at the same time facilitating it with their own actions.
Yeah, absolutely. This was all coming down the pipeline. You just thought it would stop at you.
Yeah. But so this woman, Kathy Larkman, retired officer, had the guidance released to her by the NPCC, and she just described herself as gobsmacked. Understandably so, Kathy. Women are not even an afterthought in the guidance. They are completely non-existent. Everything is geared towards the sensitivities of the officer doing the searching. They claim they are trying to be inclusive, but this isn't inclusive of women, and it doesn't respect their sex. Very true. The next thing I've got here was something very awful. John sent me this clip, and I'm very glad that he did, because the clip is wonderful. But let's just take a look at what's going on in jolly old Australia at the moment.
A note from a constituent who says, "Hi Bernie, this is a worksheet that my 10-year-old daughter brought home from school," and it includes a photo of the worksheet. "Part of her homework was to discuss with her father his erections and ejaculation. I find this very disturbing and sickening, as indeed do I have to say. I have complained to the school and was told it was just part of the curriculum. Can you advise who else I should make a complaint to?" Well, I could go on for days who she could complain to. "My daughter still plays with dolls and writes letters to the Tooth Fairy. There is no way any little girl should be told to ask these questions." Well, so say all of us. What the hell is going on in this state when 10-year-old girls are told to go home and talk to your father about his erections and about his ejaculations? What the hell is going on here?
An appropriate reaction right there. So that seemed to be an Australian member of parliament or someone like that talking to all of the other members of the Australian political circles and just getting very angry at them. Understandably so.
Yeah, but this is full-on Brave New World stuff, where they think there is no innocence of a child and that it would be appropriate. I mean, the groomer's fully in charge of the curriculum there.
Well, that is interesting as well, because I think that sort of behaviour and sort of tasking your children, the children that you're supposed to be looking after as a teacher, to go home and ask these sorts of questions to your father is going to result in probably your father being quite combative to these requests, because he's going to go, "No, I'm not going to tell you anything about that. That's disgusting. Who asked you to do that?" But then the teacher will then, as a result, so part of the Parliament of Victoria, thank you, John, the teacher will then have more ammunition when they go back to see you. "Oh, see, your parents, they don't care about you. They don't want to tell you about these things, whereas I want to teach you about these things. You can trust me." So it's like more ammunition to isolate the children from their families. It's causing... that's how I see it. I see it as just another way to try and facilitate family breakdown, or at least traditional family breakdown.
I mean, the fact that they would put this in the curriculum makes me think that they think they're not going to get in trouble for doing this.
That's what they hope so, at the very least. And now as well in America, New Jersey is requiring second graders to learn about their gender identity. That's in the headline, but it actually does go all the way back to first grade, and let's be perfectly honest, kindergarten as well. That's where these things always come out. So New Jersey public school second graders will be getting lessons related to gender identity this fall under state sex education guidelines that will take effect in September. So this is part of the state guidelines that it is appropriate for a 7-year-old to learn about gender and gender identities, these concepts which are completely disconnected from reality. They're all basically, when you actually break it down with people who believe in all of this stuff, it basically comes down to what's in your head.
Yeah, well, they believe it's all a social construct.
Yes.
So what they're doing is going out of their way to deliberately confuse 7-year-olds about how they are either boys or girls.
Yep. And the standards listed performance expectations for second graders, which include discussing the range of ways people express their gender and how gender role stereotypes may limit behavior.
Good. Limiting behavior is precisely the point of gender role stereotypes. For example, right, you've got men who don't know, especially when they're teenagers, exactly how to act around girls, young women, right? Young men don't know what they should or shouldn't be doing. The prompts are not always clear to a young man who is raging with hormones. And so limiting that young man's behavior is precisely the point. God damn it.
Yeah, we seem to have...
Sorry, I know, this makes me angry. Like,
understandably, I think it's a righteous anger you're feeling.
But the point is limiting behavior. That's good.
Yeah, I think people seem to have
Like,
forgotten...
not all behavior is equal.
People seem to have forgotten that children are supposed to have what are referred to as healthy boundaries.
Yes, yes, boundaries. And children thrive with boundaries as well. When they know what they should and shouldn't be doing, then they are happy.
Yes, I don't know if you know the Thomas Sowell quote, but he has one which is every next generation of children is essentially an invasion of barbarians that we must civilize before it's too late, which is nail right on the head. Absolutely true.
100%. And I say this as a father.
Yes. And one school district in the state distributed sample lesson plans, indicating first graders could be taught. So there's first graders. This has already gone beyond second graders. So this is 6-year-olds we're talking about now. Could be taught that they can have boy parts, but feel like a girl. What is a 6-year-old supposed to take from that? How are you supposed to feel like a boy or a girl at 6? You're only just learning about numbers. One lesson plan, pink, purple, and blue, instructs teachers to talk to their first graders about gender identity, and its first objective is to have the students be able to define gender, gender identity, and gender role stereotypes.
How is this useful for their education in any way, shape, or form?
How will this help them to understand that 2 + 2 = 4? Not that they're likely being prepped to learn that it's 4 in the first place. So, lesson's second objective is to have students name at least 2 things they've been taught about gender role stereotypes and how those things may limit people of all genders. Why should they care?
Good. Things should be limited.
Yes. And a spokesman for this district told Fox News that the teaching materials were not the school district's plans. The school superintendent told them that the materials presented to parents at the February Board of Education meeting were a sample list of resources aligned with state policy. So it's just a sample list, but it does align exactly with what the state wants us to be teaching in the first place.
And it's not going to be the full extent of what they're going to be teaching either.
Yes, so if anything, you only just got a taster right there. Then we've got some more ridiculous stuff happening on our side of the pond as well, which is a trans Scots killer now identifying as an infant. Depending nappies and baby food in jail, this is how far we have fallen as a civilization.
When people use the term identify, I'm really struggling with not just equating that with I pretend to be.
Yes, or just look at me.
Yeah. I mean, I pretend to be someone I pretend to be a baby in nappies. Okay, I don't care. Why the hell do I have to go along with your make-believe?
Well, let's find out if they are or not. So Sophie Eastwood was formerly known as Daniel and was jailed for life in 2004 for strangling a cellmate with shoelaces. So let's capitulate to the wants and desires of this murderer.
Yeah.
Killer has now told the prison governor at Palmont Jail that she wants to identify as a baby, wear nappies, and have meals blended like baby food.
No, murderer, shut up.
Yeah, it's understood that prison bosses...
Sorry, I know I'm interrupting, but...
No, of course.
The other day, I went to London and went on a tour of Victorian prisons. And man, I am well in favour of them if this is where we're going.
Yeah, I don't think they would have been particularly kind to this kind of behaviour.
No, they made you do
Rightfully
labour.
so. It's almost like prison's a punishment, not just daycare centre.
Which is literally what they're trying to turn this into.
Yes, it's understood that prison bosses are treating the demands seriously and considering which protocols might be established in dealing with the prisoner. Eastwood has already been supplied with a dummy.
Jesus Christ.
Yep. The source added, Eastwood is a complex person and intelligent, but she is pretty demanding on the resources of the prison and enjoys being the centre of attention. It's difficult to know if she really does feel a natural inclination to be treated like a baby, or if it's just some kind of attention seeking. Oh, I wonder whichever one it could be. It's not difficult for me to see. Stop giving in to the demands of this narcissistic idiot.
But why are you giving a convicted murderer leverage over the institution itself? Right? Because now, if the institution says, no, we're not going to do that, they're going to claim, oh, you're violating my human rights.
You're oppressing me.
Exactly. I'm being oppressed by the prison guards, by the warden, by the jail itself. It's like, yeah, you're being oppressed on purpose. Shut up and get back to labor. Breaking rocks is when you bring it back.
I wouldn't be surprised if this whole thing is just him seeing how far he can push it.
Oh, absolutely.
Which it absolutely is. But it must be startling to him that, oh my God, they're actually going ahead with this.
I'm shocked that anyone would be listening to this person.
Yeah, why should we? And then, obviously, in the UK, there's been a lot of controversy recently about the idea of conversion therapy, banning that. And the government recently said they were going to ban it, then pulled that back, and then said they were going to ban it again, except this time exclude trans conversion therapy, because, of course, trans conversion therapy is such a broad title that it can be applied to basically anything. And the trans activists have been attending protests, thousands attending protests, calling for the conversion therapy ban to include transgender people.
Isn't transition surgery conversion therapy?
I mean, in the most literal sense of the term,
Like what?
yes, it is.
Like,
You're
so
converting from man to woman, so to speak.
So maybe the government should ban that. I mean, like for children at least.
Yes,
you know?
absolutely, for children. But the whole thing just confuses me. Well, it doesn't confuse me. I know exactly what it is. So they were gathered at protests near Downing Street in London and elsewhere, calling on the government to include transgender people in a proposed ban on conversion therapy. I don't think we should ban any of this, to be honest, because in the UK, as we've already looked into, it's purely opt-in. And the people who do opt in are doing so through their own agency. So I don't think
it's a really tiny number of those people.
Yeah, it's a voluntary transaction between two people. Therefore, I don't think the government should be sticking their nose in it, whether or not it's successful. And also, once again, trans conversion therapy can be as simple as sitting down with a child or teenager and just asking them, "Are you sure about this? Are you sure?"
Conversion therapy.
Yeah.
Now,
But you can see what they're doing. They're trying to make it so the only legal option for people is affirmative care.
Yeah.
You can only affirm these people on whatever mental illnesses or delusions they're going through.
This is the aspect of the groomer.
Absolutely.
We only want the pipeline to go one way.
Absolutely. And then we've got 650 people, including Olympic athletes, signing a letter against trans people being included in being allowed to participate in women's sports. Callum and I have spoke about this before. Good, because if the actual sports athletes stars themselves don't step up to this, the women's category will be completely destroyed for all future generations if we just let them get away with this. So fair play, good on you guys. Then we've got Scott Morrison in Australia backing a push to ban trans women from playing female sports. Scott Morrison set to back a ban on transgender athletes competing in women's sports, calling a bill proposed by a Liberal Party Senator Brave. Prime Minister was asked on Monday whether he intends to push through legislation that would outlaw trans athletes and if he's re-elected on May 21st. He remained tight-lipped, but he said he fully endorses two Liberal Party women that have been vocal about the hot button issue, Catherine Deves and Claire Chandler. So it looks like it's going a similar way in Australia as well, potentially. You don't say tight lips on something and then say, oh, but I do actually support these two people without obviously supporting what it's doing themselves. So good. Like you said, with the right-wing backlash, we seem to be forming a unified front to combat this, which is reasonable. I think it's perfectly fine.
Desirable.
Yeah, it's what we've come so far that we're actually forming a unified front with radical feminists of all people, the right and left coming together to combat this, shockingly enough.
Notice how this never goes the other way. It's not, we need to ban female-to-male transgenders from competing in male sports. Notice how that never goes the other way.
There might be a few biological reasons for that.
Exactly. The fact that is the fact that it's not being done on an equal playing field shows that men have an inherent physical superiority when it comes to physical competitions over women, and this is why we have sex-segregated sports in the first place.
Yeah. And even more so than that, when you're going to a psychological, to the realm of the psychological, women, generally biological women, are much more agreeable and much less prone to confrontation than men, whereas biological men are much more likely to try and insert themselves in something forcefully. Not that sounds a bit...
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but that is true as well. But anyway, moving on, going back to people being completely delusional, I've found this article from Metro. I'm a trans man and should be included in discussions about abortion. I mean, if you've still got a functioning womb and uterus, I suppose so. But whenever abortion is discussed, it always seems to be presented as a woman's issue.
It is a woman's issue.
I wonder why. But it isn't. It's an issue for everybody with a fertile uterus and ovaries, which includes trans men, non-binary or genderqueer people assigned female at birth. Yes, I do agree. It also includes all of those women.
Yes.
Correct.
I was going to say it literally destroys the term trans man and compresses it down into adult human female.
Yes, but also on the subject that you brought up in the last segment, we're in the queer lobby. We don't discriminate against baby killers. We're equal opportunity baby killers over here. Then we've got the Fed saying gay. If you want to play this clip, this is Jen Psaki at a press briefing recently.
And so just the last one. So if you guys oppose this law that bans classroom instruction about sexual orientation and gender identity in K through 3, does the White House support that kind of classroom instruction before kindergarten?
Do you have examples of schools in Florida that are teaching kindergartners about sex education?
I'm just asking for the president's
Well, I think that's a relevant question, because I think this is a politically charged, harsh law that is putting parents and LGBTQ plus kids in a very difficult, heartbreaking circumstance. And so I actually think that's a pretty relevant question. Go ahead.
Dodges the question entirely, insults the interviewer for asking it in the first place. Completely ridiculous. Also, the very fact that she says LGBTQ plus kids, we know what side you're on, Jen.
But,
also, we could give you examples if you want.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we absolutely could. But like the fact that she's like, well, have you got any examples? Like, well, it doesn't matter. We're talking in theory
and in principle.
In principle, do you support this thing? And she doesn't give an answer, which means yes, because she knows that it looks terrible if she says that she does. Frankly.
Yep, and so the Fed supports saying gay. They do not support based Florida man, as if that's shocking in the slightest. And the last thing I've got here just for this week is that one of the heirs of the Disney empire has come out as trans and given a stinging rebuke to Florida's hateful "Don't Say Gay" law. So Disney were kind of ignoring this for a little bit.
If we can't pervert your children, you're just a hateful bigot.
Yeah, Disney were staying quiet on this until they got the backlash from their absolute insane staff members saying, we need to do something about it. We, a private company, need to interfere in state legislature.
Disney, the company that has recently been revealed to be actively pushing a gay agenda, where there have been multiple child sex trafficking stings and convictions in the past couple of months, are like, if we can't pervert your children, this is an abomination.
Am I surprised?
No.
Not particularly. So this is Charlie Disney, the child of Roy P. Disney. Once again, we pointed out a bit of an unfortunate name. The great-nephew of Walt Disney and his wife, Sherry. They took to the stage to announce that their family, they're saying they because Charlie identifies as non-binary.
I'm sure Walt Disney would be on board with all of this.
Oh, yeah. Their family would be matching up to $500,000 in donation to the Human Rights Committee. Roy told the Washington Times, "My wife Sherry and I have been members of the HRC for over 20 years. Equality matters deeply to us, especially when we can show it off in the public. Especially because our child, Charlie, is transgender and a proud member of the LGBTQ plus community. We were heartbroken when Ron DeSantis signed the Don't Say Gay or Trans law in Florida." So he's extended it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
The fight isn't over, and we are determined to do everything we can to stop this from happening in other places. Speaking to the LA Times, Charlie, a 30-year-old high school biology and environmental science teacher who uses they/them pronouns. Are you going to trust someone who's using they/them, non-binary, to teach your kids biology and environmental science, which will, of course, all end up being the "how dare you" realm of green propaganda? Said they had come out to family and friends 4 years ago, but decided to publicly come out in the face of anti-LGBT plus legislation in the US. So the only thing stopping me from publicly coming out was Ron DeSantis not pushing this law, and now is the time. Okay.
But literally, groom a teacher says, hang on a second, I won't be allowed to groom my kids in the classroom.
I won't be able to teach them that there's no such thing as biology while I'm teaching them this high school biology lesson.
But not only that, like, anyway.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I'll let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go.
So if you ever need an example, honestly, to combat these people, if you're arguing with them online or elsewhere, honestly, just look around, just give a quick Google. They're pretty much everywhere. And I think I'll end that one there.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the Epoch series Carl and Bo do together, this one on the origins of the Peninsular War, and on the life of Napoleon. If you want to follow what else Carl is putting out, you can follow him on Getter at @CarlBenjamin on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.